Santa Claus has gotten soft over the years. The days of naughty children getting lumps of coal are long gone. Now it seems like everyone gets a present. So today, we're checking out 8 movies where Saint Nick reclaims his edge and gets downright violent. Welcome to the Cinema Cult. I'm your guide, CT, and I can hear those sleigh bells ringing. That can only mean one thing: Santa Claus is coming to town, and in all of these movies, he's bringing a lot more than presents. So if you're on his naughty list, you better watch out.
Naughty.
Most of these movies feature Kris Kringle himself cracking skulls, but I want to kick this list off with a couple of Christmas horror classics from the 1980s that features psychos who think they're Santa, and I'm starting out with Christmas Evil, originally titled You Better Watch Out. Released in 1980, Christmas Evil was written and directed by Lewis Jackson, who said he got the idea from a vision of a knife-wielding Santa Claus he had after smoking too many jazz cigarettes. And the results of that vision are this movie that follows Harry's final descent into madness when his obsession with Santa Claus turns into full-out delusion, resulting in a murderous rampage. And this guy's Santa preoccupation goes back to his childhood when he saw Mommy doing more than kissing Santa Claus, and it totally freaks him out. Now, decades later, he's got a job at the toy factory where he's constantly disrespected, but back at home, he lets his Santa freak flag fly. His place is totally decked out in Christmas decorations, and he even keeps his own lists of the good and bad children nearby. There's nothing creepy about that. I've seen Christmas Evil compared to movies like Taxi Driver and Maniac, and it definitely shares more with those movies than a traditional slasher film. This one spends a lot of its runtime following Harry in the lead up to Christmas Eve, dealing with these feelings of inadequacy at work and jealousy towards his brother, plus the constant obsession with Christmas. Now, when he finds out that the toy drive at work is a marketing scam, Harry finally snaps and takes up the mantle of Santa Claus for himself. It's hard not to feel some sympathy for this guy because he really cares in his own twisted way. And before the killings start, he delivers a bunch of stolen toys to the local children's hospital. And even his Santa suit is meticulously constructed and looks pretty fantastic. He's not some cheap-looking mall Santa, and in his mind, he's the real deal. And this is also the only movie I know of that kicks off its murder spree on the church steps outside of Christmas Mass, using children's toys to lethal effect. And from there, Santa continues to spread joy to the good and punishment to the wicked, eventually inciting a torch-carrying mob to come after him. So if you're looking to watch a slow descent into madness this holiday season, make sure you check out Christmas Evil. And my next movie kicked off horror's most iconic killer Santa franchise, spawning a bunch of sequels and even a remake that's coming out this month. But the original, it only ran in theaters for a few weeks, thanks to some ticked-off moms back in the 80s. Of course, I'm talking about Silent Night, Deadly Night. And that's right, Silent Night, Deadly Night was released in November of 1984, the very same weekend as Nightmare on Elm Street, and this one was even out-earning Nightmare in that first week at the box office. But when uptight parents got wind of this sadistic Santa, well, they protested this movie right out of theaters before December even rolled around. And just like Christmas Evil, Silent Night, Deadly Night starts off with a young boy named Billy experiencing some Christmas-time trauma. And first, his grandfather says Santa's gonna come punish him, and then, on their way home, his family literally runs into Santa on the road, where the fat man murders mom and dad in cold blood right in front of Billy. And as if that night of horror wasn't enough, Billy's forced to grow up in a Catholic orphanage run by a callous nun who disregards his well-founded fear of Santa Claus and loves punishing naughtiness.
Punishment is necessary. Punishment is good.
Now 18 years old, Billy's working at the local toy store, but when they make him don the Santa suit, well, that's the last straw for Billy's sanity. Now he believes that it's his job to punish the naughty, starting with his coworkers.
Punishment is necessary, Pamela.
And the back half of this movie gets absolutely wild. His mental transformation into Santa has also apparently given Billy superhuman strength, and it makes for some great campy kills. and side characters are introduced just so they can be quickly killed off in entertaining ways, including Linnea Quigley making a memorable appearance and getting skewered on a pair of antlers. Now, it's hard to believe this one caused so much controversy upon release because the violence, it's so over the top, it's kind of impossible to take it seriously, but I guess that imagery of Santa with an axe was so visceral in the 80s, pearls just needed to be clutched. Now, I personally recommend watching this franchise starter before moving on to the widely memed Silent Night Deadly Night Part 2, but if you are pressed for time, the first part of that sequel reuses so much footage from this one, it's almost like a highlight reel itself. So that's it for the 80s, but I'm gonna keep it campy with this next one that has a very interesting take on the evil Santa Claus origin story. And yes, it's another Christmas horror movie with a punny title. This one's called Santa's Sleigh. Written and directed by David Steinman, Santa's Sleigh was released in 2005 and stars professional wrestler Goldberg in the titular Santa role. And I love his backstory in this movie. Here, Santa is the son of Satan and the result of a virgin birth just like Jesus. Except every year on Santa's birthday, he goes on a murder spree. Now, to stop the shenanigans, God sends an angel down to make a bet with Santa, and after losing the bet, Santa's now tasked with turning his day of slaying into a day of joy and passing out presents to the good children of the world. So now, the 1,000-year bet is up, and Santa's ready to start slaying again. You'll know if Santa's Sleigh is your kind of movie within the first 5 minutes when Santa busts in on a family full of pretentious jerks and starts busting heads. And I have no idea how they got some of these opening scene cameos, but it's a wild way to start the movie with lots of crass humor and some pretty fun kills. The rest of this movie cuts back and forth between young Nicholas finding out his family has some serious connections to this Santa origin story, and scenes of Santa going absolutely hog wild in this town of hell. Yes, the name of the town in Santa's Sleigh is Hell, because there's nothing subtle in this movie.
Why, I'm just trying to spread a little Yuletide fear.
Now, I never really cared for Goldberg as a professional wrestler, but I really enjoyed him here as Evil Santa, and he really seems to be enjoying himself, dropping one-liners and beatdowns everywhere from the local strip club to the deli, where he even pulls out his signature spear move. I love that his sleigh is being pulled by a huge bull because it reminds me of my favorite Christmas time decoration, this piece of folk art with Santa riding a bull. It's pretty cool, right? Anyway, if you're looking for a crude, early 2000s take on a murderous Santa, check out Santa's Sleigh. I had a lot more fun watching this one than I expected to. And speaking of unexpected, my next movie on this list comes from the Netherlands, and the most shocking thing about it isn't the killer Santa, it's the blackface. No, I'm not kidding, but I wish I were. This one's simply called Saint. Released in 2010, Saint was written and directed by Dutch filmmaker Dick Moss. Now, if you saw my deep cut slasher video, you know how much I loved his movie Amsterdam, so I had to check out his take on an evil Saint Nick. And this one starts out in 1492, on December 5th, when a village gets sick of being raided by Nicholas and his gang, so rather than paying tribute, they pay him vengeance, burning his ship on the water and killing him and his crew under the full moon. So now, whenever a full moon coincides with the December 5th holiday celebration, the ghosts of Saint Nick and his gang will return for blood. Now, when I put this movie on, I knew I was going to get some gnarly St. Nicholas action, but I wasn't familiar with the Dutch holiday traditions or their Santa story, which sees him arriving on a boat from Spain and accompanied not by elves, but by helpers called Zwarte Piets. So the tradition here is to dress up as either St. Nick or one of his helpers. Now, after doing some internet sleuthing, these Pete characters have changed a bit since 2010. They're now opting for a more sooty-faced look rather than whatever the hell they're doing here. Anyway, these three guys, they're on the way to a holiday party when they run into the real Saint Nick and his crew of killers who make quick work of the face-painted Pete's. Frank, the Saint Nicholas of this crew, he gets away, but the cops want to pin the murders on him. So now he's got to team up with a disgraced detective to prove that a ghostly Santa Claus is responsible for this town's ever-growing body count. Beyond the Dutch holiday traditions, There's a ton to love about this movie that's got supernatural slasher elements mixed with comedy and plenty of action. I just love a good Dick Moss chase scene, and here we got Saint Nick on his white horse riding across rooftops as the police chase from below, firing off shots along the way. It's just great stuff. But the Netherlands weren't the only European country putting out movies riffing on their holiday traditions, and my next one out of Finland isn't afraid to get a little bit weird. Let's get into rare exports. Released in 2010, written and directed by Jalmari Helander, Rare Exports riffs off the Scandinavian roots for their holiday, where Santa Claus is closer to a goat-like creature than a human, and in this movie, Santa is absolutely massive. He's been trapped inside a mountain after the Sami people tricked him into a freezing lake that turned him into a giant ice cube generations ago. The setup of this movie sees a group of foreigners dynamiting Santa's mountain grave, hoping to capture that huge horned claws for themselves. And what they didn't count on is freeing all of Santa's little helpers in the process, and when Santa's the size of a small mountain, well, his little helpers are the size of full-grown men who massacre the workers off-screen on Christmas Eve. Now from there, these naked elves kidnap the local children and steal everyone's heaters because they're trying to unfreeze Santa from his icy tomb, and there's no better meal to wake up to than a bunch of naughty children. After his father accidentally captures one of these old men elves in a wolf trap, Pietro begins to realize what kind of trouble they're all in. Now he has to convince his father and the other adults of Santa's danger before it's too late. Now, truthfully, I went back and forth on whether or not I should include this movie since it is mostly the elves getting violent here.
This is not Santa.
What?
It's one of Santa's little helpers.
But it's become sort of a yearly tradition for me to rewatch this one, so I just had to include it. And I love how this kid gets to be the main character and hero of this story as it plays out. And I also think it's hilarious how all of these elves look like Santa in his birthday suit after a week-long bender. So, if you're looking for something different this year and you're in the mood for a Christmas adventure film with a side of dark comedy and folk horror, well, you owe it to yourself to check out Rare Exports. My next film is another darkly comedic adventure, but it's an American film, so there's way more guns. I'm talking about Fatman. Written and directed by brothers Esham and Ian Nelms, Fatman was released in 2020, and it's gotta be the most star-studded movie on this list. We got Mel Gibson playing Santa Claus, who's finding it very hard to compete with modern cheap labor, even with his team of elves. And making things worse is that kids nowadays are even more misbehaved, and the US government only pays him based on how many presents he gives out. So now he and Mrs. Claus are backed into a corner with the US military knocking on their door looking to make a deal for that sweet elvish labor. Meanwhile, there's a rich little snot who's furious over receiving his well-deserved coal this year, who hires a hitman played by Walton Goggins, who himself has a chip on his shoulder over his lack of presents from Santa growing up, and he's determined to track the fat man down and make him pay for their perceived slights. Most of the action in this movie is reserved for the final act, but it does a really great job of building up these characters before things pop off as expected when the hitman finally locates Santa's farm and starts taking out everyone in sight. And the final showdown between Santa and the hitman is epic and tension-filled with a very satisfying conclusion. And I really do love this version of Santa who's been completely beaten down by the modern world, where he and Mrs. Claus are struggling to keep up with their bills. And I think it makes them super relatable as a couple, and this is a movie that I watched initially for the action, but I really came away loving the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Claus more than anything else. And they're a real team in this movie, and when Santa's down, Mrs. Claus is going to be there to help him up. So, if you're looking for a popcorn action flick this Christmas with a little bit of edge, give Fatman a try. It's a lot of fun. Now, just like Fatman, my next film features a modern version of Santa who's pretty bummed over the current state of Christmas, but this one's way more brutal. I'm talking about Violent Night. Violent Night was released in 2022, and it's directed by Tommy Wirkola, who I knew from directing the Dead Snow movies. And I loved the zombie Nazi craziness in those films, so my expectations were pretty high going into this one, and it did not disappoint. It's almost like these filmmakers were sick of the "is Die Hard a Christmas movie" debate, and just made a Die Hard inspired film where Santa Claus plays the John McClane hero role. David Harbour is Santa in this one, and he's been drinking his way through his night of deliveries, debating whether this should be his last Christmas, and eventually passing out from all the booze. And meanwhile, downstairs there's an elite team of mercenaries who've taken control of this mansion with their eyes set on stealing the hundreds of millions in cash from the basement vault. And when these mercenaries awaken Santa and get on his naughty list, they find out just how violent jolly old Saint Nick can be. Violent Night is absolutely the most action-packed movie on this list. This is a very believably brutal Santa who happened to be a hammer-wielding Viking warrior before he took on the role of spreading joy through the world as Santa Claus. In this movie, it's filled with great fight scenes, and Santa has some epic kills as he crosses these mercs off of his list. But I think my favorite scene, though, the Home Alone tribute. Young Trudy has just seen Home Alone for the first time, so she decides to set up some of her own traps for the mercs, not realizing just how lethal Macaulay Culkin's shenanigans would be. But personally, I think I'd rather fight it out with Santa than take a handful of bowling balls to the skull, but well, that's just me. So if you're sick of trying to convince your significant other that Die Hard's a Christmas movie, give Violent Night a try. Sure, it's not on the same level as that action classic, but it's undebatably a Christmas movie with a lot of those same ingredients. Now, for those of you looking for a truly vicious Christmas movie, well, this last one's for you. This is a Christmas horror movie with a Santa unlike any others on this list. It's called Christmas Bloody Christmas. Directed by Joe Begos, Christmas Bloody Christmas was released in 2022, and it's quickly become my favorite Christmas time slasher movie. Now, Violent Night is like a Christmas version of Die Hard. This is like a Christmas version of The Terminator, with way more gore and a robotic killer Santa that's the stuff of nightmares. This one takes place on Christmas Eve, and record store owner Tori isn't feeling very festive. She just wants to get drunk after work, and her employee Robbie is more than happy to join her at the bar, hoping they end the night as more than just drinking buddies. So, if watching two hipsters curse like sailors while debating stuff like who made the best Christmas song, Bad Religion or the Ramones, isn't up your alley, well, this first act of the movie might drag a bit.
First place is our Lord and Savior, Lemmy, with Run Rudolph Run.
Personally, I was just offended that no one mentioned the Vandals' Oi to the World, because that album's a goddamn Christmas classic. But the real meat of this movie takes place once that robotic Santa comes to life and starts killing everyone in sight. The gore here, it's excessive in the best way, and if you think anyone in this movie is safe, think again. Because this Robo-Santa doesn't care if you've been naughty or nice, and it's got no qualms about killing kids or cops. So if you're a fan of badass final girls, you'll definitely like Christmas Bloody Christmas too, because Tori, she's right up there with the best of them. She's battling this unkillable Kris Kringle all over town, from her home to the police station, even back at her record store. She just refuses to give up to this mechanical monster. Now, I also love how this movie looks. Joe Begos, he's the kind of director that likes to soak his movies in neon lighting, but since it's shot on Super 16, it really softens that neon glow, and the bit of film grain, it really suits the movie's overall atmosphere. So if you're looking for the goriest, most violent Christmas movie you can find, you've got to add Christmas Bloody Christmas to your holiday watch list. So that does it for my favorite Christmas movies featuring the craziest versions of Kris Kringle that I know of. Now, I also know these aren't the only movies out there featuring a killer Santa Claus, so as always, if I missed your favorite movie with an insane Father Christmas figure running wild, make sure you let me know about it in the comments. There's plenty of time till Christmas. I want to make sure I've seen them all by then. And if you had a good time with these Christmas time selections, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons to join the cult. And also, make sure you check out some of my favorite movie moments right here. And that's it for today. I'm CT Reese. Thanks for hanging out with me, and keep watching weird movies. I know I will.